All right, it is Sunday, the weekend of June 2nd, and welcome to the Trader Hub Weekly Market Review, taking a look at the price action for the indexes the last week, starting with the NQ. What do we see there, Price?
Well, actually, this afternoon here, we've done some pretty good upward movement here. It does look pretty bullish. We put in this very new low here on Friday, and they spent Friday late morning and afternoon buying it up, and that's why we've got this pretty large move on the NQ and the ES, of course. Once we flip over to that, but what we want to see here immediately are closes up above 18,670 here. That is what we need to achieve first before we suffer a pullback here and give an entry to the long side, potentially targeting all-time high here. If we don't get up above this level, we will see lower. And we don't necessarily need to carve that out right now, but just a quick sneak peek, it is definitely looking like the 18,180 level here, between 180 and 150 definitely is a logical place for price to go if it does not actually end up achieving here. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's pretty likely. I mean, I think my main thing, and you can really see it here, but also on the daily, is that, even though this really did get bought up, and that's a great look, don't get me wrong, this candle close below this level is a print. That's a lower low. So that tells us that the trend is currently, until we regain an area, which I'll talk about in a moment, the trend is actually flipped now to the downside, to the bears. But like you pointed out, we did do some gaining this afternoon on Sunday. I think that you're right. We need to see some closes up above 670 and then get like a nice little retracement long down here. I think the bigger level is the level that initially on the lower time frame, the 4 hour, kind of confirmed more downside. So something like this right there. We can see a lot of on the way up attempting to kind of break above there, holding there, failing to break back above, and that's ended up kind of sending us down. So that area specifically, but it could be anywhere sort of in this range, like, where is that? There we go. So this level that we failed from there and sent us down. This green box is a great area to look. So 18,800 to maybe 18,850. That's kind of the area that I really want to see. If we're going to make a new all-time high, we really need to regain that area first, and that's sort of the invalidation of the shorts. On the higher time frame, sure, the weekly, this is still bullish. The daily, that print makes me think we could see lower, like you're talking about. The low 18,000s are absolutely possible. If we see too much lower there, this could be like an insignificant higher high. And we could see the lows tested again, but we'll have to kind of see what's happening there. My immediate thing, is kind of in line with what you were saying, though, is I think that if we can get a print above this level, we can retrace and could potentially regain that area that sent us down. But if we don't, we could easily see that lower low put in earlier rather than later. So I think the major level locally right now, especially going into Monday, is going to be that 18,670 level. So I guess I'm in a very long-winded way agreeing with you that we could see higher, but the overall trend right now is still lower until we regain these zones up here. Do you have anything to add about that analysis or anything you see differently?
Well, I just wanted to point out on the daily here, the lowest area we had support that produced the high is right around here, and so gaining up above that 670 would be a pretty good look for longs on the retracement.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway,
does the ES look any different to you?
So it's pretty similar. It is up above, or it's right here, in this area that did that locally produced that swing up, and so that's a pretty bullish look already. What I would be looking for is gaining this box, and if it came back on the lower time frames, I'd definitely be looking to long in this area here. This is a very reasonable long. It's very likely that they'd come all the way down to this area. But if you're on the lower time frames, you can definitely take some scalps in here that will play out to your advantage. What do you think about the ES?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the NQ looks more like it just kind of barely regained from the dump locally, but this is cleared over multiple consolidation ranges on the way down, so this is a much stronger constructive look to the upside. I still think the invalidation on looking for more downside is kind of around here, where we failed to come back above this level and then sent us down. But locally, there is more than enough to say that we could start looking for longs on the lower time frames, like you were saying. We could come back down and on the 1 hour retest the areas that held here that we broke above. We could see another test from the upside in those zones, and those would be great. Or we could see any of these other consolidation zones tested, and also potentially great long opportunities up until this level that kind of invalidated our potential move back up. Like, that would be great areas to long, attempting to kind of see what, on the way back up here to 5,340. I think that those seem like a good game plan going into this week. Other than that, absolutely. I don't really have any other comments. The small caps RTY also had a pretty big gain. Again, we were talking about how if we see further down, 2020 is kind of like the major level where we would be talking about potentially kind of losing a lot of what had been gained to the upside here. But we have started to really kind of put in some moves back to the upside. We still have been really, over time fighting against this short origin level, so 2100, we still need to regain that. That was, again, the invalidation that kind of sent us down here. But we're doing the regaining that we need to see see continuation higher on the higher time frames. I wouldn't be shocked to see something like, and I'm not saying that it would just immediately dump here, but I wouldn't be surprised to see 2040 tested again, hold, and then potentially move back up, or we could hold any of these other consolidation highs that we've held for actual continuation and potentially pushing toward 2100 again. I don't really think there's anything inherently bearish about this. This hasn't lost so many big levels that it looks like we could potentially see another big slide to the downside, like some of the other charts are a little bit more precarious. I think all eyes need to be on 2100 and kind of seeing what happens there, because if we don't regain that, then we will see more further downside. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree that the area we need to gain is right here, and that it's looking good. I do think it's likely that it will reject that and come back for that local swing. But if we can continue the higher low look, like you were saying, up in this range, it does look like it'll keep going up.
Yeah, I think as long as we can continue to hold the highs, it's going to be pretty big pump town here. Just kind of thinking out loud about a lot of these charts, having lost some of these major levels on the way up and putting in lows, it's potentially the point where I think we're either going to have a pretty big blast off, or we're going to have a pretty sizable return to the downside. Just on most of these risk-on assets, I think the NQ and the ES especially, given the levels that we talked about, we really, really need to regain those levels that started the downside move. Otherwise, we could see a pretty nasty lower low put in there, or at least retesting the previous swing lows. Similar look kind of here, but again, focusing on the levels in front of us, 2100. Seems if we do gain that, I don't see that there will be too much downside. Though, just looking at the chart, sure, that would make sense that we would regain that and come back and get some support before blasting through, slurp some more liquidity. That level right there, actually, just looking at that, isn't too bad. So, what is that? 2064-ish? Yeah, it's not bad on the hourly chart. But other than that, on the gold chart, we actually had the contract switch happen last week on Wednesday. That gapped us up and kind of started to get us over, some of these ranges that we needed to see regained, but then we lost the levels again, and then attempted to regain, and we've kind of moved back down to a lower support area. So 2342, Kind of really need to hold there. I think just immediately looking at this, if we lose this zone, we're probably coming back down another 20 points, if not lower. And then if we lose those, we're probably talking about like a pretty significant slide down on gold, maybe back toward 2200. Again, like we've been kind of really talking about for a long time now, the daily even looks good even if we come back down. We've done so much gaining on gold in such a short amount of time that we could really retrace a lot of this move and still look bullish in the long term. I mean, even if we look at the monthly here, we could literally come all the way back down to 2080s, 2072 even, and still just put in another higher low for blast off. So I think it's important to kind of take that greater time frame context into context rather, because yeah, it's going to look like a pretty big slide down there, but the longer time frame trend is still up and will still be up even if we get those massive retracements. So I'm kind of just glued on this level, 342 and 2342 and 2362. I think if we lose 2342, we're going to slide. And if we can regain 2362, we can definitely try to recapture the highs up here. What do you think about gold?
Yeah, I definitely think that we need to go up and hold these yellow levels that we've identified. That it'll kind of ping pong and tighten between those two levels until it happens.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see that there's too much else to say there. It's kind of just consolidating in that green zone.
Right.
What are your thoughts on the Dow then?
Pretty constructive. It came down here below this low and came down to test this, which is, a pretty big swing, and then they bought it up. Today they've continued the buy up this afternoon. Let's look at the daily chart. So we identified this level where they weren't able to achieve and brought it down, and now we're on our way back towards that level. And so what we need to see are the higher highs and higher lows while we get up and achieve that level. Once we get to the green box that we've already identified here and have closes up above, that's going to signify that we have a reasonable chance to reach all-time high again. But this is the zone we're looking to achieve before we see that take place. And so it's looking really good to me. I certainly wouldn't be longing right here. I'd be waiting for a pullback to at least right here, but more likely down here at the lows. I think it's fairly likely we'll see something come back here this week or the next. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think a lot of these things are in these areas where we have multiple levels that really need to be regained. So obviously, like you were saying, this level that we couldn't regain from and sent us down, that needs to be regained if we're going to attempt back up here. But I also think that this level up here at 39,800, that's the level that we lost that really started this downtrend. If we're going to, obviously, we have to take this out before we even start talking about that zone. But if we come back up there and fail this level again, it's very likely, even if we look at the daily, that we could end up putting in a low that's lower than the previous swing low that we just made, because that's the level that really kind of failed after the retest to really send us on this kind of slide down. So this is kind of a week where, or even a couple of weeks, depending on where price moves, we're going to have to really kind of pay attention to these invalidation levels and these gains on the lower time frame while keeping in context the higher time frame trend, because I think these moves are going to produce big legs. Like if we regain the high here, I think we're going to probably blast off to probably pretty significant higher highs. And if we don't regain that zone, I think that we're going to lose potentially a couple thousand points on the Dow. So there's going to be some big trades coming in the next few weeks, I think, and those zones are certainly the ones that we need to be paying attention to. Let's go ahead and talk about oil. We had talked about the idea the last time, a couple times we talked about this was, making a new low and then closing back in the range. Well, we got a lot of that the previous week, and then we actually regained and actually put in a nice looking higher high on oil. And we've retraced all the way back down essentially to the reversal origin of that leg. And we're seeing it bought up a few times on the 4 hour here. Still, this is such a big retracement that we're back at the low. If we end up losing this and putting in a new low, this entire gain is essentially invalidated and needs to be regained. So I think we're really at an inflection point here where if oil loses 77 here and like prints below and goes even back down to 75.5, right? We have that marked out there. I think that we're pretty strongly in the territory of like having given up the uptrend like completely, even on the higher time frames. You know, I kept saying on the weekly, I think we need 77.6 to hold. We don't really have that right now. Obviously, we still need to see more price action for the week to come. We could slurp that and end up going higher, but I really think that we need to see this regained quickly, or we're going to be talking about having lost what was gained. So oil kind of looking like it is in a pretty precarious spot. We really need it to hold 77.6. It needs to come back up there. Otherwise, I think we're moving lower. What do you think?
So I like the 4 hour on gold. I know that
on
last
oil.
week I was, yes, excuse me.
You're good.
I believe last week I was really bullish, and I still am. What I see here is the big boys at work filling their orders after liquidating everybody here. And then I see the same thing up here to the other side. And so they're making sure that the only people who have positions are themselves. And so that's why I think when we come back down here, it's just refills on these very large positions that they took from, you know, anybody who had a trade in here and stopped out in this zone. So I really like these wicks. I think those are giving me the exact look that I'm looking to see. We put in the low and then immediately came back up above, and we're, you know, holding the range there. So, you know, they did the exact same thing here and took out stop losses and filled it and let it go up and made money. So I really think that oil is primed and ready to jump from where it is right now. It's literally in the crouched position and it's loaded to go.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely see what you're talking about, especially looking at this zone right there. So, I mean, that makes sense, right? The area that got tested to pump us up. So it makes sense that we would take that. I just think that if we can't regain 77.6, this is going to look pretty bad. That's going to be hard to justify this as being a hold. We'll probably end up making more downside there. But if we do end up gaining this, I think this whole leg is possible to regain. So I see what you're looking at there. The higher time frame would really like a move like that too. We need more validation to the upside. What do you think of the dollar's move recently?
I think it's doing very similar to what I was just talking about on oil. You see how it came up and then pretty immediately back down into their range. So they were able to get stop losses right here, forced buying, and then sell it off on those people that were forced to buy to close out their shorts. And then they immediately brought it back down to where they did the same thing to the inverse. And so they're just slurping both sides, and we're in this restriction movement here on the shorter time frames. So again, it really boils down to, are they going to allow 105 to be gained, or are we going to bring it back down to 104, put in a lower, and then create a short opportunity there for even lower here, probably 3.6. And that's what we've got to find out here this week, whether 105 or 104 will be gained or lost.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that I'm looking at locally is really this level right here, maybe about 104.7. And the reason that I'm liking that zone is that that's the level that consolidated and broke to send us up there. It's the level that we attempted to hold, and then we couldn't push higher, and we broke below. And then again right now, when we've attempting to break back above, we couldn't, and now we've pushed lower. So if we can regain this level, then it's in a similar vein to back here, we can sort of do a regain and come back and test the highs. But similarly, again, if we can't regain that level, I think it's lower is much lower is even more likely. We could certainly retest 104.2 like you were saying, or even lower than that. 103.9 is probably, I mean, I would even say that's pretty much invalidation territory. If we lose that now, it's starting to look like definitively having lost higher time frame uptrend. So definitely levels to watch. And I also think that if we lose these levels on the dollar, that'll be a good North Star for potentially looking to have bigger zones on some of the other charts taken out. So something to pay attention to. The banks had a pretty crazy week. I mean, total yo-yo, right? I mean, they dumped down like the first 2 days and then have almost completely regained that. That's not out of line with, I think, what we were saying last time is, you know, after having lost this zone up here, we expected a bit of a lower level here. 47 was kind of the lowest one that we wanted to see hold before it started to look kind of ugly, and that's exactly what we got. So we got that hold on Wednesday morning, and we've been pumping since into Friday, into Friday's close. I still think that we need to gain back above 49 here. 49.25 is kind of where those wicks are. But I think that if we can regain that, we can start talking about regaining 50.5, and that's going to be, again, if we can regain 50.5 at this point, I think that we will probably end up seeing 53. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. I believe that they're doing basically the same thing, bringing it back after. Let's actually show that on the 4-hour. You can see here, and this is of course with hindsight, but you can see how many people they were able to force into buying because they had stop losses somewhere in this zone. Well, they stopped them out, and now anyone who bought that anywhere in this wick is very much underwater. And so that's on purpose, and of course, again, all hindsight, but that means that they brought it down and they were in control of it starting around here, and they brought price down to the level that they did the same thing on the other side. You can see it here where we have all these wicks, and they brought it down to stop everybody out in this zone and then bought it back up. So if we don't hold here, we will see it come down to at least this zone, but we really want to see this low hold and retain this swing here, and currently they're doing that. So locally, I really wouldn't want to see below there. That would be the lowest we want to see it come down without expecting it to go lower than this low. So that would be a good continuation buy, looking to gain this green box. What do you think about that as a
Yeah, I think that
idea?
makes sense. I don't really want to see, I mean, you could see something like this, but it would have to be a slurp and a quick regain for something like that. That's the only way that I would really like that. Otherwise, the continuation look is kind of a much stronger look if you're going to be bullish. And I think that, again, like if we could see this level taken back out, really a nice close above, you could continue to see this kind of stair-stepping look back up to the highs. I'm not predicting that exact price action, but I think that would be a really nice constructive look to kind of grind up like that after taking out these stops as you were talking about. I think that's actually pretty likely, so we'll see what happens. You have anything to add before we sort of wrap up?
No, I think that's all.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks again for tuning into the Trader Hub Weekly Market Review. If you like this kind of content, sub to the Hub and consider joining our Trader Hub Discord community server. You can find it using our link in the description. See you next week.
Till next time.